Hi guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be testing out these two molds I've got from Etsy. They're cabochon molds. And I'll also be showing you how I make my pendants that look like faux amber. I have some examples of the amber that I made that I'll be showing you guys. Let me just adjust my light. So these are some amber pieces. Move these out of the way. These are some of the amber pieces that I've made, or some faux amber pieces I should say. They're made with allumite casting, clear casting resin, which I really like just because I'm comfortable with that. To get a closer look, if I can find the camera. Focus. There we go. Trying to get it to focus better. And then these are some of the designs which I have made. Out of this. So as you can see, I have a whole bunch of different shapes, but I have got these new molds here that I've never used before. I'll put the link in the description if I like these, to see how they turn out. And then just so I show you guys how to make the amber, I'll just show you all the equipment I use. Equipment's not the right word. So here's the resin I use. You get this at Michael's or Hobby Lobby. I really like it and I think it works out pretty good. Plus nothing I do is super deep, so this seems to work out the best. So for different inclusions, it all depends on what you want to use. I have things like these, which are just in the section usually where people make model like landscapes and things, and I think this is fall foliage. Some moss which I found at the flower area where they do like fake flowers. Some glitter, some holographic glitter. I have this glitter, and I also have which I ordered online, and then I also have this glitter which I got from Michael's. This is my favorite, and I don't use a lot of this because amber does not have a lot of glittery parts in it normally. Again, this is also got where I got where people make models, like outside models, dioramas and stuff. This is hay. I think it was called hay or tall grass. I'm not really sure. I also do some wood turning, so I have some of the scraps from wood, different types of wood like this and this that I like to include. And then what I did for these little kind of drop shape things is I took some UV resin, I colored it with different colors, and then I hardened it with my UV light, and that gave these really cool little types of, not a bead, but just a cool little thing that I like to use. And then this is also made with different types of color and UV resin, but I laid it out flat and then cut it up and then put it into a grinder to get various shapes. And I also have this, which is tree foliage. It's fake, obviously. I think it's foam or something, but that's been dyed, but I use this as well. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and get everything set up. So I almost forgot to tell you one of the most important parts, and that's the color and how I color my resin. So I got these online, which I will try and find on Amazon, I believe, different resin dyes. So I like to use red orange or orange red, a regular red, put that more in focus, yellow, and then I also like to use a little tiny touch of white, and this is, I'm gonna butcher the name probably, but Pinta, I think, alcohol ink, and that's just their white, and that's because red, usually amber isn't crystal clear. And then I also like to use for variations of different browns, just because amber has an amber color to it. And I also got a popsicle stick, which I forgot to mention, and then sometimes I will use a little bit of pigment powder. This is a maple. It's a little different than gold, but I don't use, I use the tiniest amount of this because, again, amber in real life is not shimmery, but this just adds a little bit different look to it, which I also like. So I'm going to go ahead and mix up my resin. Let me measure it out, and then we'll get started mixing. So I have my resin measured out in my resin cup, and I'll mix for 3 minutes. I'll speed up this because it takes a really long time. But before I do, I just like to mix it, and then I like to constantly scrape the sides, just so I know that everything's mixed. And I don't mix fast as well, because the faster you mix, the more air bubbles you get. And I do use a pressure pot for most of my resin castings, but I like to have minimal air bubbles. So let me go ahead and mix this up. Alright, so my resin is already all mixed up. There's a few air bubbles in here, but it's super clear. And just so you guys know what I like to do with my resin, I like to take my heat gun, which is still very hot, and I use this, here's the name, heat gun, and I put it about 1.5 feet away from the bottles of separate resin, and I like to heat them up. That way they get warm enough and become less viscous. That's just personally what I like to do. Now I'm going to add the color in, so that all just depends on your preference of color of amber. What I like to do is normally add about a drop of the orange red, and then a drop of red. With the alcohol ink, I'm going to use, this is caramel, I'm going to use a drop of caramel, or caramel, depending on however you say it. And then I'm going to use yellow. And this is from that same set of all the other inks. And I'm going to use 7 drops of yellow. And just kind of mix it up and see what color I get. I don't mind if it's a little more orange or a little more yellow. Amber all looks different anyways, so some of it's more yellow, some of it's more orange. This is a little more orange, which is fine. I think I'm going to add another drop of the brown, but I'm not going to do the caramel this time. I'm going to do the latte. Now you can see I mixed up a little too fast, so I'm getting some big bubbles in here. I like that color. So I'm going to add a drop of white, which is my white alcohol ink. Grab a toothpick. So I don't like to pour it in there, especially those little droppers. Sometimes they get too much out. So I just like to pour a little bit onto the toothpick. And then use a toothpick to put that in there, which not a lot came out. Let me try another drop. Good. And sometimes I'll get a little too much white, but the only thing that does is just make it a little more opaque than clear, which is fine because you still get some amber that is opaque in real life as well. And I'm not trying to go 100% realistic, but I like to keep it a little bit realistic. Alright, so that's stirred up. Let me get my tweezers here, and I'll start adding some of the inclusions. I'm going to go ahead and pour the resin into the molds. I think I'm going to start with these bigger molds first. And I don't pour in all the way, not yet. So I like to just kind of mix it up and see what I like best. Some I want big pieces of moss, some I want little tiny pieces of moss. It all depends on what you like, and this is kind of where your own personal style can come in to making it, kind of doing whatever you like best. And if you are going to use live things like wood and the moss, make sure it's dried out. If it's not dried out, sometimes you'll get some bad reactions with the resin. Kind of little weird air bubbles and stuff if there's any moisture. And resin does not like moisture. So try and make sure everything you put in to the resin is dry. Or dried out. Especially if you're using real things from your garden. If you're using moss that you find, leaves. I have some leaves or shavings of a tree, which is on this plate because I'm still drying it out. And I just like to add these in with some scissors. Sometimes I'll cut them really thin. Sometimes I'll leave thicker chunks. It all depends on what you like. And I'm going to go ahead and mix that around. When everything's done, I'll mix it all in there. These are those drops that I made. Sometimes they settle on the bottom, but I just really like the way they look, and they add a different look to the amber, kind of different inclusions. And I've seen a lot of faux amber that does this as well. Which I guess is what I'm making the fake amber to. Now I try not to use too many sparkly things in amber, but I am going to use some of these iridescent orange flakes that I got. These are mylar flakes and are actually used for nail art. I think people who do things with nails will be familiar where to get these. I'll try and put the link to everywhere I got this stuff, that way you guys know where I got it and can get it for yourselves if you like. Alright, so here's the tall grass. I don't remember what this is called. I know it's like tall grass or hay or something. I think I got this at Hobby Lobby, which I'm not a huge fan of the store or the store policies, but they do have good deals. So you'll see I'm being kind of messy with this. I'm not being precise or exact, and that's because you really don't have to be. Amber is a tree sap that's fossilized. Not insulting anyone's intelligence, but if you don't know what it is, that's what it is. It's a fossilized tree sap. So sometimes there's bugs trapped in there, pieces of bark. I believe, and don't quote me on this, that the more stuff that's in amber, like bugs and tree bark and stuff, the more expensive it is. I think. I could be wrong. I heard that somewhere. Who knows if I'm telling you guys a lie. Hopefully I'm not. That's just a little bit of moss that I found, and then the last thing I'm going to add is some actual wood. And this is just some shavings I use after I have turned some stuff on my lathe. I like to collect the shavings, especially since I try a lot of exotic woods, so I have pretty cool shavings that are different. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of work this into the mold itself and mix it around. I don't want it to be uniform because, again, it's natural and nothing in nature is super duper uniform. I mean, there are things, but I think I'm just talking to hear myself talk. Just go ahead and mix this up. And you can always add another splash of color if you like. I've done that before as well. Kind of added a drop of brown or a drop of yellow. I try not to do, if I'm going to do that method with adding just a drop behind it, alcohol ink, because alcohol ink tends to settle on the top. So I don't like to do that. Try to use the ink that is made for resin, because it seems to not settle on the top. It mixes in really well. And I like to just not mix it in all the way, because again, amber is natural, and in nature things aren't completely blended. And I like to fill it up just to a little over without breaking the surface tension on the top. And these molds I think I got from, they came from Germany or something like that, Russia? I want to say one of those places. I will have to double check, but they came really quick. These molds came, so I also am waiting on some other ones to do a video as well. And these came within just a couple days. So these are the resin pieces I've made. Let's see if I can bring them up to the camera. So let me see if I can get some better light for you. So that's just kind of what they look like. They're gonna dry overnight. I'll let them cure. Dry is not the right word. I'll let them cure overnight. Sorry, let me adjust my lights here. It's not very great lighting. That's better. That looks a little better for lighting. So they're gonna cure overnight, 24 hours. I wait 24 hours to demold them. I am really excited about these molds. They're really unique shapes. I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest, and then by the power of YouTube, I'll see you guys in a couple seconds. I know it's only been a second for you guys, but it is the next day. I let my resin cure overnight. These are the molds that I'm testing out to see how well they turn out, and these were in the pressure pot. And then this was not in the pressure pot. This was left out. So let's go ahead and demold these. I haven't demolded them yet. As you can see, they're still in the mold. So let's go ahead and demold them and see how this turned out. So that's how they turn out. That's the shape. They're a little, if I can get They're a little dull on top. I wish that it was shinier. Shiny like this. But they're a little dull, which kind of stinks. I was hoping they'd be a little shinier. They look real. The mold looks really shiny, but I guess it's not, and that's all right. I can take a spray and just spray these to make them shiny. I don't like doing that personally, but I can. So these turned out interesting shapes. Not satisfied with the overall shininess of the mold, but that's no big deal. The shape is neat. These are some interesting shapes. I'm happy with the shapes. Again, the only thing I have with these molds, which I'll put the link in, they're great molds, they seem well made, is that they're not shiny. And they look like they would be, but that's, it is what it is. But they're great molds and I would highly recommend them, especially if you have a resin spray. You can coat these too. If you wanted, you can coat these. I'll try coating one with the UV resin, see how that turns out, but I really like the shape of these. They're really nice. So I'd recommend these molds, and I'll put the link in the description. These are the ones I left out, and these are going to be, I think, a little more yellow than these ones. These were a little more orange. These will be a little more yellow, so let's go ahead and pop these out and see how these turned out. Sometimes they can be a little difficult to get these ones out of the mold, especially this teardrop shape. All right, so here's the ones that I popped out of the plastic mold, and notice they're already shiny, which is nice, so I don't have to do a lot of prep work with them. But I think these turned out really nice. I'm happy with these shapes, and the thickness of them is nice too. We'll grab the wire when I put wire, or put them in wood. I do really like these. Again, with these molds, they might have been made for polymer clay. I'll have to go back and read about them, but sometimes if they're made for clay, they're not super shiny. But these are really nice shaped. I do really like them. Once I get a coat on them, they'll turn out really good. So I'm overall happy with these molds, and I really like this amber technique. So I went ahead and used some of this Hutt ultra gloss polish, which I forgot I had. I use this for when I do some wood turnings, and I make pen blanks and stuff, and I use this for when I have my resin, when I have my crochet hooks, pen blanks, etc. So I used this, and this turned out really well. So it made it really shiny. So this was when I took it out of the mold, and you can see it's kind of dull. And then this was after the Hutt polish, and it's almost as shiny as the backside. And even though it's not as shiny, this almost looks a little more like real amber. So I actually really like this. And so what I recommend, if you get any of these type of molds, which are great, get this. This stuff's not super expensive. I will put the link in the description as well for this. I recommend this highly for most things. I don't know why I didn't think about it first. So, I mean, these are beautiful. Let's see if I can get it to focus. These are really nice. It turned out really nice. I'll see if I can get some white under here so you can see the inclusions better. Get a piece of paper. The inclusions turned out really nice in these. This doesn't have too many inclusions, but I really like it. These ones have a little bit more inclusions, and also have a little more shininess to it, but I like these as well. And just so you know my whole process, usually what I'll do for the backs of these is I will put this UV resin on the backs, just kind of give it a smooth finish. I'll also cut this off with a razor blade, these little edges right here, and sand them down, then put the UV resin on, make it nice and flush in the back, and then I will make something like this out of wire. Let's see if I can get to focus. Something like this out of wire. I also will put things in wood. This is a clay opal, but I'll also make some wood to put this in as well. And so I really enjoy doing this. I have some different wire wrapping, wire wrapped stones, which I actually really like the wire wrapped look. It's one of my favorites. This is the shiny cabochon I made that I was telling you about, it with iridescent flakes in it, and I really like the way it turns out, especially the different reflection of the light in here, and the background color makes a big difference with the look of the mylar flakes. But I appreciate you guys tuning into my video. I hope you learned something. I hope you liked it. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and share, and I appreciate it.